Are you ready for our third lot of 15 minutes of reading? We're reading 15 minutes each day from Bibliotherapy, The Healing Power of Reading by Bijal Shah. And all you need to do before you read aloud is always hydrate your vocal cords and put your 15-minute timer on, and that will get you into the habit. Okay, so yesterday we read early 20th century. Today we're reading from late 20th century and early 21st. More recently, researchers have also studied the cognitive impact of reading on people's minds and found remarkable results. In 1983, husband and wife team Gordon Sabine and Patricia Sabine, professors of journalism at Virginia Tech and Ohio State University, respectively, interviewed 1,382 avid readers around the United States as part of the Books That Made the Difference project. The participants chosen represented a diverse demographic, including some celebrities as well as everyday readers across a variety of ages, professions, and locations. The focus of the survey was gathering information on what books made the greatest difference in the readers' lives and what that difference was. Based on the interviews, readers reported the impact books had made on them, such as inspiring them to overcome challenges, changing their mindsets, reinforcing new ways of thinking, helping them pursue a new career, or even serving as escapism to get away from it all. Most of all, 60% of readers reported that reading was personally transformative. One reader, a young man in his 20s, reported that he had been contemplating suicide after planning to split up from his wife. But after reading the book Life After Life by Raymond A. Moody about people who have survived bodily death and people who believe the soul lives on after death, he was transformed. He wanted to live. Another man found The Eyes of the Kingdom, a book detailing the life story of a lovable Scottish priest, to be deeply comforting while grieving the death of his mother. A third found the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous instrumental in treating his alcoholism. In 2009, researchers at the University of Toronto undertook a study testing the hypothesis that art can cause significant changes in the experience of one's personality traits. In the study, participants either read Chekhov's The Lady with the Toy Dog or a control text, the same story written in factual documentary style of the same length and complexity, but lacking the aesthetic quality of Chekhov's work, and completed a before and after questionnaire of the Big Five inventory, a personality trait questionnaire that assesses the Big Five traits: conscientiousness, agreeableness, openness, extroversion, and emotional stability, as well as an emotional checklist assessing 10 emotions: happiness, sadness, anxiety, boredom, unsettledness, anger, fearfulness, contentment, excitement, and awe. None of the participants had read the short story before. Participants who read Chekhov's short story experienced notably greater changes in personality than the control group, and relayed being more emotionally moved, confirming that their change in personality was a result of the emotions evoked by the text. The researchers concluded that personality shifts brought on by reading fiction are worth exploring. The role of writing in bibliotherapy. The best writers tend to write what they know, and often their writing can be semi-autobiographical, inspired by personal experiences. So as part of the creative process, they need to work through their own emotions. Their writing can be cathartic, and this emotional experience is passed on to readers, enabling readers to connect with the writing in a more profound and meaningful way while also being healed by it. Inspired, I began to journal every time I read. I refer to this process as literary journaling, and it involves thinking deeply about what I've just read, observing my emotional reactions, considering what the writing was bringing up for me, and acknowledging what I'd learned about myself through the process. Mindfully reading page by page, I was creating my own parallel narrative, shaping the heroine of my own story. As Joseph Campbell, author of The Hero with a Thousand Faces, would say, the journaling enabled self-compassion and connection to both the text and myself, all key ingredients for healing. Journaling has now become a key part of my practice, as you'll see in the coming chapters. Embracing transformation through bibliotherapy. My interest in bibliotherapy encouraged me to take stock, and I completed an audit of sorts by reviewing how books had changed me over the years. They had been a constant source of support throughout my life. I remembered my parents sending me to England as a 7-year-old girl to spend 8 weeks of summer with extended family and the excitement and nervousness that followed. To put myself at ease, I thought about Roald Dahl's Matilda, the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant, and James and the Giant Peach, all of which featured protagonists who had to fend for themselves without the loving support of a parent. I thought that if Matilda, Sophie, and James could go it alone in much more challenging conditions, then I could stick it out for at least a couple of months without my parents. My mind then turned to memories of a painful breakup that I'd experienced when I was 24 and how Nicole Crass's A History of Love rescued me. It was my first breakup, and the overwhelming feelings of sadness and longing were simply too painful for me to process. So I shut down emotionally instead. It wasn't until reading A History of Love that I allowed the tears that I'd been holding back to flow freely. Immediately, I felt understood and less alone, and this experience reiterated to me the remarkable power of words to navigate love and loss. I documented these experiences, journaling alongside, to capture the micro-transformations that had occurred over time. My new bibliotherapy journaling practice helped me notice small changes within myself. I took these reflections to my therapist, who reinforced these positive changes by offering moral support. The whole process worked hand in hand, reinventing me book by book, session by session. Poetry therapy. While novels and nonfiction played a significant role in my healing, poetry did too. I had experienced friendship breakups and losses that felt devastating. Relationships that felt solid and lifelong had actually turned out to be fragile and temporary. This realization offered clarity, but the sense of loss felt overwhelming and monstrous. I was enveloped in a shroud of sadness and anger, and I no longer had the energy to contain either. Poetry helped me to make sense of what was happening. It succinctly captures our charged emotions, and it's in the midst of these emotions that some of the best poems are written. As the words cathartically appear on paper, we begin to heal. The therapy happens in the writing. Poetry's powerful healing qualities have been documented during both World Wars and the American Civil War. Poems were read to soldiers to help them cope with trauma and the brutalities of conflict. Doctors would write poems for their patients, emotionally connecting with them. A striking example of this is John Keats, who trained as a doctor. Today, poetry is prescribed by modern-day doctors and physicians at Yale University School of Medicine and University College London School of Medicine, while Yale maintains a required literary reading list that includes poetry. The use of poetry continues to grow as a recognized form of therapy. More and more psychotherapists across the US, UK, and Europe are using poetry therapy as part of their practice. Globally, the International Federation for Bibliopoetry Therapy sets standards of excellence in the training and credentialing of practitioners in the field of poetry therapy, qualifying them to practice. Below is the first draft of a poem that I penned. It's not about the style, it's about poetry's importance as an outlet through which to channel our emotions. Transitions. A journey's death births another, a reincarnation, a natural pause to take stock and reflect, to better unhelpful habits, to hit reset, to rein in life's challenges, to realign to the bigger vision, redesign, to smile in the face of memories, to celebrate, to cry for good times gone, for special times that inevitably ended, for time that no longer is, to mourn loss. Each journey breaking the groundhog routine of life, forcing us to reiterate, pivot, and optimize, quietly demanding that we reevaluate to learn valuable lessons. Permit celebration, merge excitement and hope, making sense of life, building character, diversifying life experience, making us whole. It's not one long road, it's zigzags, surprising turning points that compound, building momentum as it gives shape to a gigantic long game. That, in hindsight, is absolutely perfect. It's ultimately our story. End of poem. I read poems on friendship as well as writing them. They brought hope, helping me to appreciate the exquisite and blessed relationships I did have in my life. They serve as antidotes to the challenging boundary work I was doing. In Gillian Jones's poem, A Friend, there was a gentle reminder that to have good friends, we need to be great friends too, while Robert Frost's A Time to Talk highlights the importance of making time for friends, and William Blake's A Poison True explores the danger of bottling up our feelings about friends. As I connected with poets and poems, I often experienced a piece as though it had been written for me specifically. The wisdom of the poems carried me through. A definition of bibliotherapy. As my personal literary exploration drew to a close, my own definition of bibliotherapy emerged. An art therapy that leverages the power of stories to heal. Its magic lies in the relationship formed between the reader and the writing, fiction or non-fiction, poetry or essay, and the reflection of the thoughts, feelings, observations, and lessons that the writing provokes through a daily journaling practice, literary journaling or counselling. Journaling and various bibliotherapy techniques became my toolkit. It was almost a new form of emotional literacy. I would read, reflect, analyse, discuss, process. Therapy has always been a complex undertaking. This was no different. I felt ready, all set to share my insights and techniques with others, to help them find solace and healing in literature, and to help them process buried emotions that felt too painful to dig, and once dug, too painful to heal. Through literature, you never hold your feelings directly. You observe them in others. Someone else carries your pain. While this is a reflection of yourself, you are held by the literature, empathized with. The safety of someone else feeling and carrying your own difficult emotions while you address and come to terms with them is transformative. Plus, reading about other people's negative emotions makes it easier for us to accept the same negative feelings in ourselves. For only by feeling pain can we be liberated from it, the basis for catharsis. With this epiphany, I began to welcome clients into my space, inviting them to bring their pain, their loss, their grief, their stresses and anxieties, their traumas, their relationship issues, their identity, gender, and sexuality struggles, and their learning disability challenges such as dyslexia, so that they too, from a distance, yet so intimately entwined with the text, could feel seen, carried, held, and empathized with, and eventually healed. And now we're about to go into chapter 2. So we've done chapter 1. Chapter 2, bibliotherapy, what it is and how and why it works. So a quote from George Eliot here from The Natural History of German Life. Art is the nearest thing to life. It is a mode of amplifying experience and extending our contact with our fellow men beyond the bounds of our personal lot. So what is bibliotherapy? If we think of as traditional therapy, if what we think of as traditional therapy is often referred to as the talking cure, then bibliotherapy is what I call the reading cure. It brings with it an added dimension to healing by providing almost immediate access to the unconscious mind through the realm of the imagination. Not only are the words on the page talking to us, but they also take us on a magical journey into the depths of our unconscious, where we visit the recesses of our mind that we've kept neglected for years, or encounter spaces and desires that we never even knew existed. Freud's free association method, freely sharing thoughts, words, and anything else that comes to mind in talk therapy, is automatically enabled in bibliotherapy. Literature triggers our minds to unearth and reconnect with forgotten memories. Well, there we go. That is our third lot of 15 minutes, and we've actually finished chapter 1. Read along with me. Order the book, Bibliotherapy, The Healing Power of Reading by Bijal Shah. See you tomorrow.